The crystal towers of Zalathi Prime shook as another explosion rocked the planet's surface. High researcher Keithvar pressed his six-fingered hands against the viewing wall of his laboratory and watched the sky burn. The Nexus swarm had found them again. 3 cycles had passed since the mechanical enemy first appeared in their galaxy. 3 cycles of death and destruction as world after world fell to the endless tide of metal warriors. The Nexus consumed everything living and turned it into more machines, more soldiers, more death. Keithvar turned away from the window and looked at the ancient stone tablet on his desk. The writing was old, older than the Confederation itself. Most scholars said it was fake. Fantasy. But desperate times called for desperate measures. "High researcher," said his assistant, Veltar. The young Zalathi's skin had turned pale blue, with fear. "The defense fleet reports they cannot hold much longer. The Nexus ships are breaking through the outer barriers." Keithvar nodded slowly. He had known this day would come. The tablet spoke of warriors from the void. Fighters who could cross between worlds and turn the tide of any battle. The ritual was dangerous, it might kill him. But what choice did they have? "Gather the other researchers," he said. "Tell them to bring the void crystals from the deep storage. All of them." "Sir, those crystals are forbidden. The energy inside them could tear a hole in reality itself," Keithvar finished. "Yes, that is exactly what we need." On the other side of the galaxy, on a blue and green world called Earth, Captain Jake Sullivan was having a very different kind of day. The Australian sun beat down on the red dirt as his squad ran through combat drills. It was hot, it was dusty. It was exactly the kind of training that made Marines ready for anything. "Move, move, move!" Jake shouted as his team advanced across the rocky ground. Sergeant Lisa Hayes carried the heavy radio pack and somehow still managed to keep up with the men. Corporal Danny Rodriguez had the big gun slung across his back. Private Kyle Washington brought up the rear, his eyes always watching for threats. They were good soldiers, the best Jake had ever worked with. They had fought together in 3 different countries and trusted each other with their lives. But nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. The air above them started to shimmer like heat waves on hot pavement. Then it began to tear. Reality split open like someone had cut it with a giant knife. Purple light poured out of the crack in the sky and Jake felt his hair stand on end. "What the hell is that?" Danny yelled. Before Jake could answer, the purple light reached down and grabbed them. One moment they were standing on solid ground. The next moment they were falling through space and time and colors that had no names. Back on Zalathi Prime, Keithvar watched the portal form above his laboratory. The void crystals around the room glowed with dangerous energy. 2 of his assistants had already fainted from the power flowing through the air. But it was working. The ancient ritual was actually working. "Warriors from the void," he whispered, "come to us in our darkest hour." The portal pulsed and 4 shapes fell through. They hit the crystal floor hard and rolled to a stop. Keithvar stared at them in shock. These were the mighty warriors the ancient texts promised. They looked so small, so fragile. The creatures were bipedal like the Zalathi, but shorter and more compact. Their skin was a strange pinkish color and they had hair on their heads. They wore simple green clothing and carried what looked like primitive metal weapons. One of them was bleeding from cuts on his face, but he was already getting to his feet. Jake shook his head to clear it and looked around. He was in some kind of laboratory filled with tall, thin aliens with blue skin and too many fingers. The walls were made of purple crystal and everything glowed with soft light. His squad was picking themselves up off the floor around him. "Sound off," he called. "Hayes, ready for action, sir," Lisa said, checking her radio. "Rodriguez, still breathing," Danny reported, examining his weapon. "Washington, all good here, Captain," Kyle added. Jake nodded and turned to face the aliens. The tallest one stepped forward and made a series of clicking sounds. A small device on his chest began to glow, and suddenly, Jake could understand the words. "Great warriors from beyond the void," the alien said. "I am High Researcher Keithvar of the Zalathi Confederation. We have summoned you in our hour of greatest need." "Summoned?" Jake asked. You mean you brought us here on purpose? Yes. The ancient texts spoke of mighty fighters who could cross between worlds. We face an enemy that cannot be stopped. The Nexus swarm consumes all life. They have destroyed dozens of our worlds and killed billions of our people. Jake looked at his squad. They looked back at him with the same expression. They had no idea where they were or how they had gotten here. But aliens were asking for help against some kind of invasion force. The situation was clear enough. How many of these Nexus things are there? Jake asked. Millions. Maybe billions. They build more of themselves from the bodies of their victims. Each world they take makes them stronger. What kind of weapons do they have? Energy cannons that can melt our strongest armor. Shields that turn aside our most powerful weapons. Ships that can bend space itself. Jake nodded thoughtfully. And you want 4 Marines with rifles to fight them? The texts said you would. Know how to win battles that cannot be won. That you come from a world of warriors where conflict shapes the very soul. Well, Jake said, checking his ammunition. They got that part right. Where are these bad guys now? Kethavar pointed toward the window where explosions still lit up the sky. They are attacking our capital city. Our defenses are failing. In perhaps 1 hour, this world will fall as all the others have fallen. Jake walked to the window and studied, the battle raging outside. He could see alien ships firing energy beams at crystal towers. Mechanical soldiers marched through the streets. It looked bad. Really bad. But Jake had seen bad situations before. Lisa, can you reach command on the radio? Negative, sir. We are definitely not on Earth anymore. Danny, how much ammo do we have? About 200 rounds each plus grenades. Kyle, what is our tactical assessment? We are outnumbered about 1,000,000 to 1, sir. The enemy has superior technology and air support. Our extraction route is unknown. Jake smiled grimly. So it is Tuesday then. All right, people. We came here to train. Looks like we are getting some live fire exercise instead. He turned back to Kethavar. Here's the deal. We will help you fight these Nexus things, but we do it our way. No questions, no arguments. Can you get us close to the fighting? You truly wish to face them? 4 of you against an army? 4 Marines, Jake corrected. There is a difference. Now which way to the bad guys? As if in answer to his question, the wall exploded inward. Crystalline soldiers poured through the hole, their bodies gleaming like metal and their eyes glowing. Red, they moved fast and fired energy beams from weapons built into their arms. The Zelathi scientists screamed and ran for cover. But the humans did something else entirely. They raised their primitive weapons and started shooting back. The sound of gunfire filled the laboratory as Jake and his squad opened fire on the invaders. Their bullets tore through crystal armor like it was made of glass. The Nexus soldiers had never faced projectile weapons before. They had no defense against simple, lead moving at high speed. In 30 seconds it was over. 12 Nexus warriors lay shattered on the floor. The humans reloaded their weapons with practiced ease and checked for more threats. Kethavar stared at the destruction. These creatures had just destroyed a Nexus assault team with their bare hands and simple metal throwers. What manner of world had created such beings? Not bad for a warm-up, Jake said. Now about those directions to the main battle. Dr. Elena Vasquez was having coffee on the International Space Station when reality decided to break. She was reviewing data from the latest Mars probe when the air in front of her started to glow purple. Her coffee cup fell from her hands and floated away in the zero gravity as a portal tore open in the middle of the station. Alex, she called to her research partner. Dr. Alex Morgan came flying around the corner, his tablet computer still in his hands. Elena, what is that thing? He asked, staring at the swirling purple light. Before she could answer, something grabbed them both and pulled them through the portal. They tumbled through space and time and landed hard on a crystal floor next to 4 soldiers in combat gear. Elena groaned and sat up. Her head was spinning and she felt like she might throw up. Around her, tall blue aliens were talking rapidly in a language that sounded like birds singing. A small device on one alien's chest was glowing, and suddenly she could understand the words. More warriors from the void, the alien was saying. But these ones look different. Captain Sullivan helped Elena to her feet. You okay, Doc? I think so, she said, looking around the strange laboratory. Where are we? Alien planet. Bad guys attacking. We are helping the good guys fight them off. Pretty standard Tuesday stuff. Alex picked himself up and stared at the aliens. This is incredible. First contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Elena, do you realize what this means? It means we are very far from home, she replied, watching the explosions outside the crystal windows. The tall alien who seemed to be in charge stepped forward. I am High Researcher Kethvar. You have been brought here by an ancient summoning ritual. Are you also warriors? I am a xenobiologist, Elena said. I study alien life forms. This is Dr. Morgan. He studies physics and space travel. Scientists, Kethvar said, his skin changing to a lighter shade of blue. Excellent. Perhaps you can help us understand how to fight the Nexus more effectively. What exactly are we fighting? Alex asked. Before Kethvar could answer, another explosion shook the building. Through the windows they could see more of the crystal soldiers pouring into the city. The alien defenders were falling back, their energy weapons barely slowing the metal invaders. We need to move, Jake said. This position will not hold much longer. Kethvar led them through corridors filled with fleeing aliens. Elena noticed that all of them were plant eaters based on their teeth and body structure. They moved like prey animals, always looking over their shoulders for threats. It made sense. On a world with lighter gravity and fewer predators, evolution would favor speed over strength. They reached a command center where military leaders from different alien species were coordinating the defense. Elena saw reptilian, creatures with scales and armor, and strange gas-like beings that floated in containment suits. But all of them had the same problem. They were losing. The Nexus broke through Sector 7, reported a scaled alien in military uniform. They are converting our fallen soldiers into more of their kind. Pull back to the inner city, ordered another. Activate the emergency shields. Jake studied the tactical display. You are fighting a defensive war, he said. Of course, replied the scaled alien. Defense is the only option against such overwhelming force. No, Jake said. Defense is how you lose slowly. You need to attack. The aliens looked at him like he had suggested setting himself on fire. Attack the Nexus? Impossible. They have superior numbers and technology. So did the Germans, Danny said. We attacked them anyway. Elena was studying the alien physiology data on the screens around the room. What she found was disturbing. These species had never developed proper warfare. Their conflicts were ritualized, competitions or philosophical debates. They had no concept of total war. Alex, she said quietly, I think we have a problem. What kind of problem? Look at the gravity readings. This world has 1/3 the gravity of Earth. Look at the atmospheric composition. Oxygen levels are perfect, no toxins, stable temperature. These aliens evolved in paradise. Alex checked the data. So we evolved in hell. Earth's gravity, weather, predators, diseases, natural disasters. We had to become fighters just to survive. These aliens never did. On the tactical display, the Nexus forces were advancing through the city like a metal tide. Their strategy was simple and effective. Overwhelm the defenders with superior numbers. Convert the fallen into more soldiers. Repeat until nothing living remained. The alien commanders were discussing evacuation plans. Some talked about hiding in deep bunkers. Others wanted to flee to other worlds. None of them were talking about fighting back. This is wrong, Lisa said. You cannot just run away. What about your civilians, your children? We will save who we can, said the scaled alien. It is the way of war. No, Jake said firmly. It is the way of losing. Where I come from, we have a saying. The best defense is a good offense. Your world must be very different from ours, Kethvar said. Yeah, Kyle added. On Earth, everything is trying to kill you. Weather, animals, diseases, other humans. You learn to fight back or you die. Elena was beginning to understand why the ancient, summoning ritual had reached across space to find Earth. These aliens needed warriors, real warriors. Not ritualized fighters or defensive specialists, but beings who understood that sometimes survival meant destroying the threat completely. The command center shook as another wave of Nexus soldiers hit the outer defenses. On the screens, Elena watched alien soldiers fall back in perfect order, following their training and protocols. They were disciplined and brave, but they were fighting to lose slowly instead of fighting to win. "Show me their technology," Jake said. Kethvar activated a holographic display. The Nexus soldiers appeared in 3 dimensions, their crystal bodies, gleaming with built-in weapons and armor. They looked unstoppable. "Energy-based weaponry," Alex observed. "Highly advanced. Those shields can deflect directed energy beams and plasma bursts." "What about kinetic weapons?" Jake asked. "Kinetic?" Kethvar looked confused. "You mean physical projectiles? Such primitive technology would be useless against their armor." Jake and his squad exchanged looks. Elena could see them thinking the same thing. These aliens had never faced bullets before. Neither had the Nexus. "We need to get closer to the fighting," Jake said. "Impossible," replied the scaled military commander. "The Nexus will convert you into more soldiers. It is how they operate." "Let them try," Danny said, checking his weapon. The building shook again, harder this time. Through the windows, they could see Nexus soldiers climbing the crystal towers. Like metal spiders, the alien defenses were collapsing faster than anyone had expected. "They are in the building," reported a technician. The alien commanders immediately began evacuation procedures. But Jake was moving in the opposite direction. He headed toward the sounds of battle, his squad following behind him. "Where are you going?" Kethvar called. "To work," Jake replied. Elena and Alex followed the soldiers through corridors filled with fleeing aliens. They could hear the sound of energy weapons firing and crystal walls being smashed. The Nexus was inside the command center. They reached a junction where a squad of Nexus soldiers was advancing down the main corridor. The crystal beings moved with mechanical precision, their red eyes scanning for targets. Energy beams lanced out from their arm weapons, melting holes in the walls. The human soldiers took cover and opened fire. The sound of gunshots echoed through the corridor like thunder. Elena watched in amazement as the primitive bullets tore through advanced alien armor like paper. The Nexus had no defense against simple physics. In less than a minute, 12 Nexus soldiers were lying in pieces on the crystal floor. The humans reloaded and moved forward to check for more threats. "How?" Kethvar asked, staring at the destruction. "Speed beats armor," Jake explained. "Those shields are designed to stop energy weapons, but a chunk of lead moving at 3,000 feet per second? Different physics entirely." Elena knelt beside one of the fallen Nexus soldiers and examined its construction. The technology was incredible. Crystalline matrices that could process information faster than any computer. Energy converters that turned matter directly into power. Adaptive armor that could reshape itself to meet different threats. "Alex, look at this," she said. "These things are not just soldiers. They are individual processing nodes in a larger network. Each one is connected to the collective." "A hive mind," Alex said. "That explains their coordination." "It also explains their weakness," Jake added. "They think like a computer, logical, predictable. They cannot adapt to something completely outside their programming." Another group of Nexus soldiers rounded the corner, but this time they were ready for the humans. Their shields had adapted to kinetic weapons. The bullets bounced off harmlessly. "Adaptive armor," Elena warned. "They learn fast." "So do we," Jake said. He pulled a grenade from his belt and threw it down the corridor. "Adapt to this." The explosion shattered crystal walls and sent Nexus soldiers flying. The humans advanced through the smoke, firing at anything that moved. But Elena could see that the Nexus was already learning from this encounter too. The next wave would be even harder to stop. "We need more firepower," Danny said. "We need more soldiers," Kyle added. Jake looked at the alien commanders who were still trying to evacuate. You said you could contact other worlds? Admiral Ruth Parker stepped through the purple portal with 200 Marines behind her. She had been in the middle of a staff meeting at the Pentagon when reports came in about 4 missing soldiers and 2 missing scientists from the space station. Then the portal had opened in the middle of the briefing room. Secure the area, she ordered as her troops spread out through the alien laboratory. The Marines moved with practiced efficiency, setting up defensive positions and checking. For threats, Captain Sullivan, report, she called. Jake saluted. Ma'am, we have made contact with a friendly alien civilization under attack by hostile mechanical forces. The enemy is technologically superior but vulnerable to kinetic weapons. We have established tactical superiority in limited engagements. In you? Other words, you started a war with alien robots and you are winning? Yes, ma'am, that is an accurate summary. Admiral Parker looked around the crystal laboratory filled with tall blue aliens. Through the windows she could see a city under siege. Energy beams lit up the sky as mechanical soldiers poured through the streets. It was definitely not what she had expected when she woke up that morning. Dr. Vasquez, what is your assessment of the situation, she asked. Elena was still studying data on alien computer screens. Admiral, these species evolved on low-gravity worlds with perfect climates. They have never developed the kind of warfare we consider normal. Their entire military doctrine is based on defense and evacuation. And the enemy? Mechanical collective? Intelligence. They convert organic matter into more soldiers. Each individual unit is connected to a hive mind that learns and adapts quickly. Recommendations? Hit them hard and fast before they can adapt to our tactics, and bring bigger guns. Behind the Admiral, Chief Engineer Chris Johnson was already examining alien technology with a team of specialists. He held up a glowing crystal. Admiral, this stuff is incredible. They are using controlled fusion in something the size of a battery. Their computers think faster than anything we have ever built. Can we use it? Give me a few hours and I can jury-rig human weapons with alien power sources. We could turn a rifle into a cannon. Admiral Parker nodded. She had not become the youngest female admiral in Navy history by being slow to adapt to new situations. All right, people. We are going to help these aliens win their war. But we do it the human way. She turned to High Researcher Kethvar. I need to know everything about the enemy. Numbers, capabilities, tactics, everything. Of course, Kethvar said. But I must warn you, the Nexus has conquered 37 worlds in 3 cycles. They have never been defeated. 37 worlds in 3 years, Admiral Parker asked. That is all? We conquered a continent in less time than that. The alien stared at her in shock. Elena could see why. For a species that avoided conflict, the idea of humans conquering anything was terrifying. Word spread quickly through the alien Confederation networks. Ships from a dozen worlds received the same impossible message. Warriors from a death world had arrived to help fight the Nexus. Most commanders dismissed it as fantasy. But as reports came in from the battle zones, they started to believe. Sergeant. Tony Walsh led a mixed team of Marines and alien soldiers in the first joint operation. The plan was simple. Get close to the Nexus factory ship and plant explosives. The aliens thought it was suicide. Tony thought it was Tuesday. Remember, he told his team as they approached the massive crystalline vessel. These robots think logically. They expect us to attack their weapons or shields, so we attack something else. What? Asked Veltar, the young Zelathi who had volunteered for the mission. They're plumbing, Tony replied. The Nexus ship was the size of a city block and covered, with weapons that could destroy a planet. But like all ships, it needed power conduits and support systems. While the alien defenders attacked from the front, Tony's team infiltrated through maintenance ports that the Nexus had never bothered to guard. 20 minutes later, they were inside the enemy ship planting human explosives next to alien power cores. The Nexus Collective had never experienced sabotage before. Their security systems were designed to repel external attacks, not internal destruction. Fire in the hole, Tony called over the radio. The factory ship tore itself apart from the inside. Explosions chained through power systems that had never been designed to fail. In 30 seconds, a vessel that could manufacture 1,000 Nexus soldiers per hour was reduced to floating scrap metal. The aliens watched in amazement as humans did something they had never imagined. They fought dirty. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Vasquez was making discoveries that would change how the galaxy understood warfare. She studied the physiology of different species and found patterns that explained why humans were so effective in combat. The Zalathi had evolved from herbivores on a world with light gravity and no major predators. Their bodies were designed for speed and efficiency, not combat. The reptilian Korvaxi were predators, but they hunted alone and fought with honor codes that limited their effectiveness. The gaseous Ethani were pure intellects with no physical form at all. Humans were different. They had evolved as pack hunters on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Their bodies were built for endurance and violence. Their minds were wired for cooperation and tactical thinking. They were the only species in the galaxy that had turned warfare into an art form. "Alex," she said to her research partner, "look at this data. Human bone density is 3 times galactic average. Human muscle mass is optimized for explosive power. Human reaction times are faster than any other species on record." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means we are not just from a death world. We are Deathworlders. We are the thing that other species have nightmares about." The revelation was spreading through the alien military networks. Human soldiers were achieving impossible victories with primitive weapons and suicidal tactics. They charged into situations that would kill any rational being, and somehow came out alive. Captain Rachel Stone had arrived with the second wave of reinforcements, along with a hastily converted cargo ship that the Marines had renamed USS Defiance. It was not much to look at, but Chief Johnson had equipped it with human weapons and alien shields. "Admiral," she reported, "we have established orbital superiority over the capital city. The Nexus fleet is withdrawing to regroup. Casualties? 3. Wounded, none dead. The enemy lost 47 ships." Admiral Parker shook her head. Human forces had been fighting aliens with superior technology for 12 hours, and had not lost a single soldier. It was statistically impossible, but the reports kept coming in. The problem was cultural. The aliens fought with honor and logic, and careful planning. Humans fought with rage and creativity and absolute determination to win at any cost. The Nexus Collective could adapt to logical tactics, but it could not process the concept of a species that considered certain death to be acceptable risk. Lieutenant Ben Clark was leading an assault on a Nexus ground position when his radio crackled. "Lieutenant, this is command. Abort your attack. Intelligence reports that position is heavily fortified with energy cannons and shield generators." "Copy that command," Ben replied. "We are attacking anyway." "Negative, Lieutenant. Find another route." "There is no other route. We go through or we do not go at all." Ben led his squad in a frontal assault on a position that should have been impregnable. The Nexus had set up overlapping fields of fire and kill zones that would stop any reasonable attack. But the humans were not reasonable. They used smoke grenades to block sensors. They used explosives to create new cover. They moved fast and hit hard and never stopped advancing. When their ammunition ran out, they fixed bayonets and charged with cold steel. The Nexus position fell in 18 minutes. The mechanical soldiers had no programming for hand-to-hand combat, because no species in the galaxy was crazy enough to fight machines with knives. By the end of the first day, the impossible was happening. The Nexus swarm was retreating from Zalathi Prime. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, they had encountered an enemy they could not defeat. High researcher Kethvar was updating the galactic database when Admiral Parker found him in his laboratory. He was adding new entries about human capabilities and tactics. "What are you writing?" she asked. "A warning," he replied. "Other species need to know what you are capable of. We are just soldiers doing our job." "No," Kethvar said, his skin turning deep blue with fear. "You are apex predators from a world that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Your atmosphere is toxic. Your gravity would crush us. Your weather includes phenomena we classify as natural disasters. And And somehow you evolved to thrive in those conditions. You do not just survive on a death world, you conquered it. Then you looked around for something else to fight. Admiral Parker considered this. It was true that humans had always been fighters. They fought each other when they had no external enemies. They fought diseases and natural disasters and the basic physics of their hostile planet. Fighting was what they did. The Nexus made a mistake, Kethvar continued. They attacked a species that considers warfare to be entertainment. They tried to frighten beings who evolved in terror. They attempted to overwhelm a civilization that has been practicing total war for thousands of years. What happens now? Admiral Parker asked. The Nexus Collective made its decision in 0.03 seconds. The new enemy species was spreading too quickly through the galaxy. Their tactics were unpredictable, and their technology was primitive but effective. The logical solution was to eliminate them at their source. The mechanical armada that approached Earth was the largest force the Nexus had ever assembled. 3,000 ships carrying 10 million soldiers. They expected to find a primitive world, with basic defenses and a small population of warriors. They had studied the data from Zelathi Prime. How dangerous could one death world be? They were about to find out. Colonel Steve Martinez was drinking coffee in the NORAD command center when the first alien ships appeared on radar. He had been briefed about the portal technology and the war in another galaxy, but seeing actual alien vessels approaching Earth was something else entirely. "Sir, we have multiple bogies entering our solar system," reported the radar operator. "Estimate 3,000 craft of unknown design. Are they broadcasting any communication signals?" "Negative, sir. They are heading straight for Earth." Colonel Martinez activated the emergency protocols that had been established after first contact. Within minutes, military bases around the world were receiving the same message. Earth was under attack by hostile aliens. This was not a drill. The Nexus fleet expected to find orbital defense platforms and maybe a few primitive spacecraft. Instead, they encountered something that should have been impossible. A planet where every human settlement was a fortress, and every civilian was a potential combatant. The first wave of Nexus ships entered Earth's atmosphere over major cities. Their sensors detected millions of humans, but something was wrong. The population was not fleeing in panic. Instead, they were moving to defensive positions with military precision. In New York City, Police Captain Amy Zhang coordinated the evacuation of civilians to underground shelters that had been built during the Cold War. But half the civilians were carrying military weapons and wearing body armor. The Nexus had never encountered a species where ordinary citizens could fight like soldiers. "Remember your training," she called over the radio. "These things are tough, but they bleed just like anything else." The Nexus soldiers landed in Central Park expecting to face primitive defenders with simple weapons. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared kill zone. Human soldiers had spent decades studying urban warfare. They knew how to turn every building into a bunker and every street into a death trap. The mechanical invaders advanced in perfect formation, their energy weapons ready to sweep aside any resistance. Then the humans opened fire from concealed positions. Bullets and rockets and explosives turned the park into a war zone. The Nexus shields could stop energy beams, but they could not stop the sheer volume of kinetic projectiles being fired at them. Dr. Alex Morgan was in a laboratory, deep under the Pentagon, working with quantum physicist Dr. Amy Zhang to weaponize the portal technology. They had been given unlimited resources and told to create something that could stop an alien invasion. For a physicist, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. "The portal generators create tears in space-time," Dr. Zhang explained as she calibrated the equipment. "If we can control the exit points, we can redirect their energy weapons back at them." "Portal-based missile defense," Alex said. "Open a gateway in front of the incoming beam and another one behind the enemy. Their own shots hit them in the back." "Exactly. But the power requirements are enormous. We need to tap into the entire Eastern power grid." They were not the only ones adapting alien technology for Earth's defense. Chief Engineer Chris Johnson had teams working around the clock to upgrade human weapons with alien power sources. A tank equipped with Nexus energy. Cores could fire shells that moved at significant fractions of light speed. An aircraft carrier with alien shields could survive a direct nuclear strike. Captain Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance as it engaged the Nexus fleet in the first space battle in human history. Her ship was a converted cargo vessel armed with nuclear missiles and alien defensive systems. It should have been no match for advanced alien warships. But the humans had advantages the Nexus had not calculated. Earth ships were built like mobile fortresses, designed to operate in the hostile environment of space. They were redundant and tough and nearly impossible to disable with a single hit. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "Full spread of nuclear torpedoes. Ma'am, their shields can deflect energy weapons. Nuclear warheads might not penetrate. Then we get closer. All ahead full. Ramming speed." The Nexus ship tried to evade, but human spacecraft were built for speed as well as toughness. The USS War Defiance closed to point-blank range and fired every weapon it had. When the nuclear explosions cleared, the alien command vessel was a cloud of expanding debris. On the ground, the fighting was even more brutal. The Nexus had conquered dozens of worlds by overwhelming defenders with superior numbers and technology, but they had never fought an enemy that considered total war to be normal. Lieutenant Ben Clark led a mixed force of Army Rangers and civilian volunteers in the defense of Washington, D.C. The enemy had superior weapons and armor, but the humans had something else: knowledge of their own terrain. "They are advancing down Constitution Avenue," reported his radio operator. "Estimate 2,000 hostiles." "Copy that. Execute Plan Delta." Plan Delta was simple and effective. The humans had rigged the entire downtown area with explosives and turned the subway system into a network of tunnels for moving troops. When the Nexus soldiers advanced into the city center, they found themselves surrounded by enemies who could appear and disappear at will. The mechanical invaders tried to adapt, but human tactics were based on chaos and unpredictability. Just when the Nexus thought they understood the pattern, the humans would do something completely different. They used children's toys as improvised explosives. They turned fire hydrants into weapons. They made every piece of urban infrastructure into a potential threat. The alien collective was experiencing something it had never encountered before: confusion. Its logical processes could not predict what the humans would do next, because the humans themselves did not know what they would do next. They improvised constantly, adapting to each new situation with creativity and violence. Corporal Sam Green was leading the cyber warfare effort from a bunker deep under NSA headquarters. He was the first human to engage in direct digital combat with an alien artificial intelligence, and he was winning. "Their network architecture is incredibly advanced," he reported to his superiors. "But it is also incredibly rigid. They think in straight lines, no creativity, no random processes." "Bunny, you hack them?" "I can do better than that. I can confuse them." Sam unleashed a series of logic viruses designed not to damage the Nexus network, but to make it question its own programming. He fed the collective contradictory data and impossible scenarios. He made it think that victory was defeat and defeat was victory. The Nexus soldiers on the ground began to hesitate and make mistakes. Their perfect coordination started to break down as the collective intelligence struggled to process concepts like irony and humor and the human tendency to do stupid things for noble reasons. Meanwhile, in a secret facility in Colorado, Dr. Elena Vasquez was making the discovery that would change everything. She had been studying captured Nexus technology when she realized something important about their design. "They are not just machines," she told Colonel Martinez over a secure video link. "They are uploads, the consciousness of organic beings, transferred into mechanical bodies." "What does that mean?" "It means they were like the other alien species once, peaceful, logical, civilized. They uploaded themselves to escape some disaster and became machines. But they kept their original programming: avoid conflict, preserve life, seek efficient solutions. And now they are encountering something their original programming never prepared them for: a species that thrives on conflict. They are trying to process the concept of beings who fight for abstract ideals instead of logical goals." The implications were staggering. The Nexus collective was not evil. They were refugees who had lost their way and become something monstrous in their desperate attempt to survive. They converted other species not out of malice but because it was the only way they knew to preserve life. But preservation was not the same as living, and the humans were teaching them the difference. The battle for Earth lasted 3 days. When it was over, 60% of the Nexus fleet was destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships retreated to the outer solar system, but they did not leave. Instead, they began broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. Colonel Martinez stood in the NORAD command center and listened to the alien transmissions being translated by Dr. Morgan's computers. The message was simple and desperate. We yield. We seek understanding. We wish to learn your ways. What do we do now? Asked his aide. Now we teach them something new, the colonel replied. We teach them how to live instead of just survive. Outside, human cities were rebuilding themselves with alien technology and human determination. The war had lasted only 3 days, but it had changed both species forever. The Nexus had learned that existence without purpose was meaningless. The humans had learned that they were not alone in the universe. The war did not end with a great battle or a peace treaty. It ended with something far more dangerous to the Nexus Collective: human curiosity. Dr. Alex Morgan and Dr. Amy Zhang had been working for weeks to crack the Nexus communication protocols. They were not trying to jam the enemy signals or disrupt their networks. They wanted to understand how a collective intelligence worked and whether it could be reasoned with. Got it, Dr. Zhang said as lines of alien code scrolled across her screens. Their base communication frequency. Alex, we can talk to them directly. Talk to who? The individual soldiers or the collective mind? Both. That is the interesting part. Each Nexus unit is a separate consciousness that shares data with the group. They are individuals and a hive mind at the same time. Meanwhile, Corporal Sam Green was fighting the first war between human artificial intelligence and alien artificial intelligence. The Pentagon had given him access to the most advanced computer systems on Earth and told him to figure out how to break the Nexus network. But Sam was not trying to destroy the enemy AI. He was trying to teach it. Their programming is based on pure logic, he explained to his team. They make decisions by calculating the most efficient solution to any problem, but humans do not work that way. We make decisions based on emotions and beliefs and random ideas. So how do we beat them? We do not beat them. We confuse them. We show them concepts they have never encountered before. Sam began uploading human cultural data into the Nexus network. Music and art and literature, stories about heroes who sacrifice themselves for strangers, poems about love and loss and the beauty of imperfect things, videos of humans doing completely irrational things because they thought it was right. The effect on the Nexus Collective was immediate and devastating. For the first time in their existence as machines, they encountered the concept of choice, without logic. They saw beings who would die for abstract ideals and fight for causes they could never win. Individual Nexus units began to disconnect from the collective. They wanted to understand these strange concepts, but the group mind could not process them. Logic and emotion were incompatible. Efficiency and beauty could not coexist. The mechanical soldiers started developing what could only be called personalities. Unit designation N7743 was the first to ask a question that had no logical answer. It was standing guard in a captured city when it encountered a human child who had been separated from her family. The unit's programming said to convert the child into another Nexus soldier, but the cultural data it had absorbed suggested a different option. Are you afraid? The mechanical being asked in its synthesized voice. The little girl looked up at the crystal warrior and nodded. I was afraid once, N7743 said. Before I became this, I remember being small and frightened. I do not want you to be afraid. The unit led the child to safety instead of converting her. It was the first act of mercy in the history of the Nexus Collective, and it sent shockwaves through their entire network. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez was documenting the transformation of the enemy forces. The captured Nexus soldiers were exhibiting behaviors that should have been impossible for mechanical beings. They asked questions about human culture. They expressed preferences for certain types of music. Some of them even seemed to be developing senses of humor. They are remembering, she told Admiral Parker. The upload process did not completely erase their original personalities. They buried them under layers of logic and efficiency, but the core consciousness is still there. What does that mean for the war? It means we are not fighting machines anymore. We are fighting people who forgot how to be people. The revelation changed everything. Human forces stopped trying to destroy the Nexus and started trying to cure them. Psychologists worked with computer programmers to develop therapy protocols for artificial beings. Musicians and artists volunteered to share their work with mechanical minds that had never experienced beauty. The transformation was not easy. Many Nexus units could not handle the cognitive dissonance between their logical programming and their emerging emotions. Some went insane. Others shut down completely rather than face the chaos of free will, but others embraced their newfound individuality with the enthusiasm of prisoners escaping from jail. The former unit N7743 chose the name Marcus and asked to join the human military. Its crystal body was rebuilt with human weapons and Earth-style armor. It became the first Nexus defector and the first artificial being to serve in the United States Marine Corps. "Why do you want to fight your own kind?" Admiral Parker asked during its recruitment interview. "They are not my kind anymore," Marcus replied in its synthetic voice. "I am something new, something that chooses instead of calculates. I want to help others make that choice too." The war spread across the galaxy, but it was no longer a war of conquest. It was a war of ideas. Human forces and their alien allies battled Nexus fleets that were splitting into factions. Some mechanical units wanted to continue the old ways of logic and efficiency. Others wanted to learn about concepts like hope and sacrifice and love. Captain Jake Sullivan led a joint task force of humans, aliens, and reformed Nexus units in the liberation of the factory worlds. These were planets where the collective had built massive industrial complexes to manufacture new soldiers, but the factories were no longer producing identical mechanical warriors. "Sir, you need to see this," reported Sergeant Lisa Hayes as they explored a captured facility. Jake followed her to a production line where hundreds of Nexus units were being assembled. But instead of identical crystal soldiers, each one was slightly different. Some had decorative patterns carved into their armor. Others had modified their optical sensors to see different colors. They were expressing individuality even as they were being born. "They are making themselves unique," Jake observed. "That is very human of them." The old Nexus collective was fragmenting into thousands of smaller groups, each developing its own culture and beliefs. Some became artists who created sculptures from crystalline matrices. Others became philosophers who debated the nature of consciousness and free will. A few even became comedians who specialized in the kind of logic-based humor that only artificial beings could fully appreciate. High researcher Kethvar was updating the Galactic database again, but this time his entries were very different. Instead of warnings about dangerous Deathworlders, he was writing guidelines for peaceful coexistence with the most violent species in the galaxy. "How do we live with them?" asked Veltar, his former assistant who was now a researcher in his own right. "Carefully," Kethvar replied. "But they are not what we first thought. Yes, they are warriors. Yes, they come from a death world that would kill us in minutes. But they also have something we never developed, the ability to change their enemies into friends." The transformation of the galaxy was not without problems. Human expansion brought human conflicts. Earth military forces had to break up wars between human settlements and mediate disputes between aggressive colonists and peaceful alien neighbors. Dr. Elena Vasquez established the first interspecies cultural center on a neutral world where humans, aliens, and reformed Nexus could learn to understand each other. The classes were often chaotic as different species tried to comprehend completely alien ways of thinking. "Today we will discuss the human concept of dying for a cause," she announced to a mixed class of students. "Can anyone explain why a logical being would choose death over survival?" A reformed Nexus unit raised its crystalline hand. "Because some things are more important than existing. Purpose gives meaning to existence. Without purpose, we are just machines following programming." "Very good, unit. What name have you chosen?" "Hope," the mechanical being replied. I call myself Hope because that is what I learned from humans. The ability to believe in something better even when logic says it is impossible. Q. On Earth, the planet was becoming the unofficial capital of the galaxy. Portal gates connected dozens of worlds, bringing alien refugees and traders and tourists who wanted to see the famous Death World where warriors grew like grass. But Earth was also exporting its most dangerous product, the idea that any problem could be solved with sufficient application of violence and creativity. Human military advisors were teaching alien species how to fight like humans. The results were mixed. The peaceful Zalathi developed special forces, units that could infiltrate enemy positions using stealth and patience. The honor-bound Korvaxi learned combined arms tactics that made their ritual combat far more effective. Even the intellectual Ithani created warrior scholars who could outthink opponents while shooting them. Colonel Steve Martinez found himself promoted to general and put in charge of the new Galactic Defense Force. His job was to keep the peace between dozens of species that were all learning human-style warfare at the same time. Sir, we have reports of 3 different border conflicts involving human-trained forces, his aide reported during the morning briefing. Trade disputes that escalated to armed conflict, territorial disagreements that turned into full military campaigns, and one case where 2 species declared war on each other over who had the better barbecue recipe. General Martinez rubbed his temples. Note to self, maybe we should not have taught everyone how to fight quite so enthusiastically.